I'm the Thesterninator. Welcome to the channel.
And today we're talking about Marvel, specifically Marvel Rivals, but also the comics, the toys, the merchandise, the Mjolnir hammer replica that my father broke when he was trying to spin it. And when he said it's okay to replace it, I told him it's fine. They don't make them anymore. But I digress. It seems like you can't throw a stone without hitting something Marvel related nowadays. And I'm not complaining. I am a huge Marvel fan. So I thought, why not turn Marvel Rivals characters, the biggest and newest video game that everyone seems to be ranting and raving about, into Pokemon? Now, if you want to see more Marvel Rivals as Pokemon, this is actually the second video in that series. So make sure that you head over to the channel and check that one out right after this video. Without much further ado, let's hop into this video. I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me
Friend from work!
And thanks for visiting the channel. Don't forget to drop below and like, comment, and subscribe. Do all that stuff that makes me and YouTube happy, and let's hop into it. First off, I wanted to start with a character who very much should have been in the first video, that being Captain America. You can't really have the Avengers without Captain America, though Marvel has tried. I wanted to go with something very simple, very easy. Obviously, if I'm going to be doing America, I should do something that focuses around America. So I thought about the concept of a bald eagle, and I know Braviary is already kind of our American Pokemon, being an eagle as well, but I couldn't get around it. There were so many things that I could do. I even thought for a little bit about making him a turtle, given the shield, but decided, regardless of everything else, I have to do a bald eagle. I have to make Captain America feel like America! So I created this eagle concept, really focusing in on trying to make it not look like Braviary. It turned out to be a lot more difficult than previously anticipated, but I thought if I go more the way of it being smoother, more angular, rather than feathered and fluffy, I could do something fun. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. I wanted to create this vague outline of a star shape on the chest, but I felt like it was just a little too vague, so I went in and actually made a star. Not quite sure how I feel about it, but I think it gets the point across pretty well. I also wanted to make it feel threatening and menacing, not because that's what America is, partially because that's what America is, but I also wanted to make it feel powerful. Captain America is a powerhouse of the team. He's a leader. So I wanted to capture that energy. I wanted to make this Pokemon feel big and smooth and cool, and that turned out to be really difficult because birds are not one of the Pokemon that I immediately jump at for designs, but you can't undo it. Like I said, I thought of a lot of ways to do this differently to get something that I could feel more confident with, but in the end it ended up being a fun experiment and something that I wasn't super in the same lane as, but either way, I think it worked. You guys already know how I feel about fish, and we're going to get to that bridge when we cross it, but I am excited for what's going to come in this video. Furthermore, I decided to give it some of this black to really emphasize that white star. A lot of design questions and elements came into play with this design. Should I do just a star? Should the wings be striped? Is that too much? Is that too weird? Should I add black because that feels not Captain America? But in the end, I realized and decided these aren't one-to-one comparisons. They're Pokemon based on the character. So being that they're based on the character, they should have some influence of that character, but not just be them. So I incorporated some black because, as we can see in Marvel Rivals, Captain America actually does incorporate quite a bit of black as a base suit underneath his primary armor, so it felt like it worked, and I'm pretty happy with it, despite my reservation towards birds. So this is Cap Talon. The name brings in Talon as well as Captain. It is the Freedom Pokemon. It is a flying fighting type, and for the shiny, I went with a red color scheme over that blue to make it feel more like Falcon, or to make it feel like Captain Canada. Either way, either is your choice, I suppose. I just think the red really, really works. But moving right along, I had another character to get to, and this one's animal counterpart was a little simpler. Using Black Panther as the next character, I went in, and the biggest struggle that I actually had was the composition of the shape. I draw a lot of quadrupedal animals as Pokemon. I recently did a beast type of every evolution, kind of to match Raikou, Suicune, and Entei, but this one really threw me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was that it was such a specific animal, being a panther, that I just kind of tripped up on it along the way, but ultimately found a structure that I'm pretty happy with, and utilizing some colors outside of black felt like a sin, but I had to. I wanted to break up the shapes and wanted to make it feel like it was significantly different than just your standard panther. So I created these shapes that kind of go along the back and also gave it that regal type of feel. I think about Tyrantrum and how it has that fur collar to give it kind of a kingly energy, and I wanted to do the same type of thing here without just mimicking exactly what Tyrantrum has. So I went in, made it super feline, giving it these big whiskers, which were actually one of the first points that I wanted to do on this design. I don't know why, just felt like whiskers make it feel feline. And I don't think we have a ton of whiskered Pokemon. The first one that comes to mind actually is Whiskash, but I wanted to bring in some of those elements that make it feel very feline, very powerful. I just, all sorts of stuff. I had to play with a lot for these designs. This video really troubled me, but I am hoping that it came out to something that I can be happy with and you guys can be happy with as well. I brought in those purples because that tends to be his color kind of in the movies, and gold felt like it was pulling too much away from the blackness of Black Panther. So I instead decided to go with this purple type of color, and I think that it really brings some things together, as well as, like I said, really incorporating some elements from the movie, that being that bluish or purplish type of energy that emanates from the suit itself. I've actually had some people question me on coloring, saying, hey, do you just not know what colors you're picking? Truth is, I play around with colors. Not everything has to be 100%. I've said this here, and I'll say it again, and I've said it in the past. I'm not trying to do a one-to-one match of every single character. I'm trying to do something that is inspired by that character. And I think utilizing different colors in those ways allows that to flow through. Makes it feel fantastical, but also, yeah, takes away a little bit from the prompt. So it's a balance there. So this is Panthregal. Panthregal is the loyal Pokemon, kind of to go alongside the Freedom Pokemon. It is a dark type, and the shiny, I brought in that white that we see emphasized throughout a lot of the Black Panther movies, as well as other characters and skins within Marvel Rivals itself, and I love this shiny. Namor is one of my favorite characters in the entirety of Marvel canon, whether that be how he was portrayed in film, how they were able to bring in new aspects of the character in that way, his weird love triangle between Reed and Susan, or his weird winged ankles that kind of don't make sense a lot for the character, but make him really cool. Namor was actually one of the first Marvel characters. It was him and the Human Torch to be released kind of alongside each other, so he has this history. And I started going in making something that felt big and brutish, something that was a shark. And as much as I tried to make it work, I feel like I was struggling with something here, like I was missing the point of the character. Like, he's not this big bruiser, and while in the game he's a really good fighter, in the comics as well, he's more so a diplomat, a very powerful diplomat, mind you, but a very, very, very powerful and intelligent character. So I moved away from the shark, and that left me with nothing. I went in on this design knowing nothing about what I wanted to do, having no plans, and just kind of sketching out rough stuff. And then I decided to bring in those winged heels that are super weird, and decided, what about a flying fish? Wouldn't a flying fish be interesting? So I went in, made those designs, made these concepts, and I'm happy with how it turned out, though it does feel like it's missing something. I'm not quite sure what that was at the time, but I felt like it worked a lot more and emphasized the character without doubling up on something. Whenever you have a big, brutish, hulking character who's water adjacent, I feel like we all jump towards shark, but there are a lot of really cool fish in the world. I've been told. You know how I feel about fish. I don't like them. I don't like drawing them. They're one of my least favorite animals to draw into Pokemon, but there's not much that I can do with it, especially given that I'm making a coastal region myself. I have to learn to be okay with fish. So this flying fish, I feel, really captures the abilities and the personality of Namor, while also just being a cool Pokemon. One of the few fish that I'm actually proud to say I helped make. I also wanted to bring in those colors, kind of that topaz type green that we see there, and allow it to kind of flow through and be the key color of this character with those yellow highlights. I feel like it really spells out Namor without being Namor. So this is Narif, the flying fish Pokemon. It is a water flying type, duh, and has one of those shinies that I really like that's just a little bit more subtle, a little bit harder to tell, but brings in some of those cool neon colors that I really, really enjoy. But he's not big enough. He doesn't feel powerful enough. I want Namor to feel powerful. I want the Pokemon based on one of my favorite Marvel characters, despite it being one of my least favorite types of Pokemon designs, to feel powerful. So I went with a different type of flying. I went with something more akin to a sailfish. A fish that has these huge giant fins, combining that with a flying fish to make this thing that feels almost like a jet. And I love this design. One of my favorites of the video. I can't say enough about it, how much that I just dig it so much. Namor made me like a fish design, and I know that I'm cheating by it being my own fish design, but look at this thing. I dig this so much. It conveys the power of Namor while also having a hint of it not being this dumb, brutish type of muscle-only character, and I dig it. The pose that I was able to come up with, everything that was brought in, I feel like it really makes a good character. And I know, it sounds an awful lot like I'm tooting my own horn, saying, I made something good, look at me, look at how good the thing that I made is, ooh, ooh, ooh. But I surprised myself on this one. Again, I don't like fish. I don't like fish Pokemon, but I'm happy with this. And that's a weird thing to say. I was still able to bring in a lot of the colors that we see throughout Namor, even bringing in more of that watery neon type of water blue that we see in his character for Marvel Rivals, and I think that it's a lot of fun. I was able to bring in the inspiration of a sailfish, a flying fish, incorporate the colors, incorporate the demeanor, give us a little bit of the history and backstory to this character within the design, bringing in that flight as well as that aquatic power, and I am happy with it. I am beyond stoked with how this design came out, and I think it really sells the character. I also got to play with the eyes a little bit, which I always love to do, making the eye black, the same color as the flesh black, and using that blue watery underline and pupil to it to give it shape rather than the eye itself. So this is Namarend. Namarend is a flying fish Pokemon, a water flying type, has that awesome shiny, and I think when you look at the silhouette, you can really tell that this feels like some sort of fighter jet or air vehicle, and I dig that so much. Feels so just out of this world. Speaking of out of this world, if you're interested in participating in our current art challenge, that being Multiversal Drift, then you can do so. Just go on to any social media, that being Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, or my Discord, which is linked down below in the description, and post a Pokemon from a different universe. Give me a little bit of a rundown on what this universe is like, and be sure to use hashtag SternMultiDrift whenever you're posting on social media. That way I can find your stuff. But think of a world where maybe the villain won. Maybe the hero was a villain. Maybe a villain was a hero. What would that look like? What if it was a world where humanity evolved within the distortion realm, or a Mad Max type world where everything was ground and rock type? I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Next up, I wanted to grab one of my favorite characters, and I believe a fan favorite character, that being Groot. Did you know that Groot was actually a villain when they first appeared in Marvel Comics? Isn't that interesting? He also spoke with this big and pompous demeanor, which was later retconned into him being a hero, as well as only saying, I am Groot. Specifically those three words, and pretty exclusively in that order. Groot has such a weird history, and such a storied one for Marvel, that you'd never guess when you just look at the character. And hopefully next time that you play Marvel Rivals and you come up against a Groot, you think a little bit, hey, I wonder what this character's all about, and you look it up and come to find out, Flora Colossa and the people of Planet X are quite interesting. I'm sorry, I'm nerding out a little bit over this big talking tree. I decided that I wanted to look at a Pokemon that already exists, that being Bonsly. If you watch the movies, you know that Groot goes through this transformation throughout the Guardians of the Galaxy films, as well as Infinity War. He's changed throughout, so I wanted something that changed. Starting out as this little tiny twig that we see at the very, very end of Guardians of the Galaxy 1, and turning into this little dancing tree that we see in the end credit scene. So I thought Bonsly is kind of perfect for that. So this is our regional Bonsly, and I dig him. I had to think of ways to make it feel different from the standard Bonsly, so I actually inverted the colors of the eyes. Rather than them being yellow with black pupils, I made them black with yellow pupils, especially given that Groot tends to have glowing yellow eyes in most media. Marvel Rivals did something a little different, making them green, but regardless, I wanted to go with that yellow. I felt green was a little too on the nose for the tree typing, so I went with the yellow from the comics, from the merchandise, from the movies, etc. And I dig it. I also decided to make it this little tiny dead tree. So this Bonsly doesn't actually have any pseudo leaves. It's also going to be an actual tree, given the fact that that's what Groot is. He's an alien. He's a floricolosser from Planet X. But regardless, he's a tree. Yeah. Even Thor goes out of their way to say he's a tree. So even Thor calls him that. But I really dig this character, and I think it fits the prompt with Emsuian Bonsly. Emsuian Bonsly is a bare branch Pokemon and a grass type, with the shiny capturing that standard golden pseudo-wudo type of color, and I dig him. Look at him in that silhouette. He's so little. I love him. Little branch. Little nothing guy. But he has to evolve at some point. So that was my excuse to draw Groot. Groot is one of my favorite characters in the comics and a pretty fun play in Marvel Rivals, although I feel like I don't see him nearly as much as I would assume given how popular the character has been. But maybe that's just one of those things where the algorithm of how the game functions overrides the popularity of a character. So I went in and decided I wanted to make this guy big. I didn't want to go full pseudo-wudo. I wanted it to feel like its own Pokemon. And I wanted him to feel tall, towering. If there's anything that I know about Groot, it's that he is huge. If there's anything else that I know about Groot, it's that he's a Floricolossus from the planet X. And throughout the history of the character, he actually could talk, but ended up losing that ability. I digress, nerding out a little bit too much. Groot is awesome. I wanted to make something that felt more humanoid than plant-based. I thought for a bit about just making it feel like vines, but vines didn't feel like Groot. Well, I could make it a petrified type of bark, kind of similar to what we see in the design for Marvel Rivals, where it's this hardened shell, but thought no, because that feels a little bit too rockish for Pokemon, and I've done a lot of characters that feel heavily armored in that way, so I decided to do something that felt fun. Just kind of letting loose and making something that seems fun. I've said it before, and one of those things in the Pokemon kind of understanding of how the design works is a Pokemon should feel like it should be your friend, or like it could be your friend. And I wanted to get that idea here, because Groot is friend to all. Friendly dude. Big friendly tree. So rather than being a pseudo-wudo who hides and tries to make sure people don't see it, this version actually runs out and finds people. It wants to give them a hug. It wants to be their friend. It really needs companionship because it's just a little kid in that tree-like mind of itself, but most people do tend to be afraid of it. So, by the way, while I'm talking about this backstory and lore that I had with this character, if you happen to notice in these videos, I don't put abilities. The reason is because you guys are a lot better at that than I am, and I think it's a fun way to reach out with the community of you guys. So if you have an ability for a Pokemon or several Pokemon in this video, let me know down in the comments what you think. I also love reading you guys' dex entries and everything that you guys come up with for that. It's a ton of fun, and I read as many of them as I possibly can. So let me know down in the comments what you think for the abilities and for the dex entries for these wild and crazy guys. I'm particularly excited for what we get with this Pokemon. You guys are insane and talented. So this is Grootowudo. Grootowudo is a bare branch Pokemon and a grass fighting type. Yes, he takes on that fighting type Pokemon typing. He also still retains that gold color for his shiny, which will cause a lot more people to actually run out to it. Probably one of those shinies that when it pops up, everyone's aware of where it is. But if we start out with Captain America, we have to at least end with Iron Man. Iron Man is so heavily tied into Marvel and the history of it expanding into what it is today, that it's hard to believe that there was a time when he was kind of a secondary character, ignored by a lot of fans. But with the release of 2008's Iron Man movie, the Marvel took off, all because of this character who became a staple, not just in the movies, but became larger in the comics, in the TV shows, in merchandise, and became a larger part of Marvel Rivals. Heck, if it weren't for the MCU and that 2008 movie, he probably wouldn't even have been in the game. The game probably wouldn't exist. So I wanted to make something that really focused in on that lineage and that story. I thought about doing a big iron character, a big ironmonger if you will, but decided what if we start with this character in a cave? What if we add some story to this element? Because the story of Iron Man expands so far beyond just what he was in the comics. What if he was a little rock, right? Stay with me. He's a little rock with dreams and aspirations. He wants to build, but all he ever has is stone. And so he builds stone sculptures. He builds these relics. He builds these tall and mechanized construction creations. But there's always a little bit more to him. He could make more if only given the opportunity. But that opportunity tends to not arise. What if this Pokemon wasn't just any other Pokemon? What if this was our legendary, hidden in plain sight? Think something kind of like how Nebby becomes Solgaleo or Lunala. This weird little thing ends up becoming our box legendary. Or how Cyclizar has the ability to evolve or de-evolve or come from this alternate dimension to become Miraidon or Koraidon. So I thought about this little rock that wants to build, but most people don't give it the chance. That's Mastark. Mastark is a Cobble Pokemon, pure rock type. For the shiny, I went with this slate type of whitish color, something that really evokes the idea of how we used to draw on slate to make kind of blueprints and plans back in the day. Not very powerful, but we're not done with him yet. You see, if you take Mastark and give it the Arc Reactor item that you can find in your travels, you'll find that his inventions, his creations, evolve drastically. He's now able to utilize this to move steel beams, to form them around other objects. The way that I see this working is if you can have a Mastark, this weak, fragile little Pokemon that's built like rock and can't do much, in your party, give it the Arc Reactor and give it some time with an empty slot in your party, you might find yourself with a brand new Pokemon. Something built, not born. Something created. Something manifested out of the steel and scrap that you've come across on your way. Maybe the red of this Pokemon is built from the collapsed Pokeballs of catches that you tried to make that didn't quite work. Maybe that yellow comes from different evolution stones that just didn't work to give this Pokemon more power. All these different parts that help you on your journey. But the failures are what allow it to build. That's kind of the story of Iron Man, isn't it? This guy, who was so full of himself, such a jerk, had to be broken down in order to become something better. To become something not just for him, but for the world. And ultimately, that became a story. A grander story that evolved and expanded to create a Marvel Cinematic Universe. To create a Marvel Rivals game where we now get to play as these characters live in their shoes. We get to play superhero like we did when we were kids, but we get to look like those superheroes now. We get to have their powers in Marvel Rivals, all because of Iron Man, a once nobody. I think that's a really beautiful and amazing story for the evolution of this character, and I wanted to incorporate something that fit that. So you'll notice that this design doesn't look very much like our design for Mastark, but that was never the point, right? The point was to make it so that it builds something new, something intellectual, something fun. And I think that if this were some sort of game, this would be our legendary. And it'd be the whole idea of how do you get it? Well, you have to work with nothing. You have to build something out of a box of scraps in a cave. And ultimately you find this powerful creature, one that legend says was able to lift entire universes on its shoulders. While it may look new and shiny, it's believed that Mastark at one point were the greatest creators of their time. But as humanity evolved, it evolved beyond them. But if they were given the right chance, the opportunity, then they could build vast, powerful forces beyond what even humans could imagine. Would you as a trainer give them the chance? Would you give them the ability? This is Starmer, the reactor Pokemon. Steel and Psychic type. I gave it that Psychic type so that it can be able to use something similar to Repulsor Blasts with that Psychic energy. And the shiny captures that Mach 1 type of look that I just dig. This is a Pokemon I would shiny hunt. So the question is, who are you adding to your team? Are you going to take the effort to get your Mastark to build a Starmer? There's a ton of characters that we still haven't done. So let me know down in the comments who you want to see in the next video of the series. and watch our previous videos so that you can be caught up on the ones that we've already done. We're now 2/5 of the way through the entire lineup, so we're moving along. Also, don't forget that once a month over on my Ko-fi, I drop a bunch of designs. That day was yesterday, so new designs there. You can also support me over on Patreon, where you get exclusive looks and high-res images, and our Discord has a vastly growing community of really cool people. That's down in the description below with the rest of the links, but it sounds like you know where to find me, so I'll catch you in the next one. But before we go, I want to give a big shout out to all of the supporters who help make these videos possible. Ever since going full-time, I've seen the support kind of expand exponentially, which I never anticipated. You guys are awesome. I want to give a big McThankies from McSpankies to some of our higher tier supporters, those being Siren Sprague. Sorry that I got your name wrong a couple videos ago and mispronounced it. I want to give a shout out to Daniel, Kaylin Cat, Soren Frost, Styx TV, Teacup Cryptid, Dan Bush, Tony F, and Ko-fi supporter. You guys are insane, and I couldn't do it without you crazy people, so thank you.